On August 28th, 2007, it was reported that a farmer in Bargersville, Indiana, died after falling into a bin filled with corn. Retrieving the farmer's body required the removal of 8,000 bushels of corn. The local fire chief was quoted as saying, "There was just too much corn." 600 miles away in Washington, D.C., Attorney General Alberto Gonzales announced his resignation after being accused of lying under oath and misleading Congress. This is What a Year. Welcome to What a Year, the show where we pick a year and spend 10 episodes assembling a time capsule of movies, music, and other cultural odds and ends. I'm Ethan Warren.
And I'm Bushel Magoo.
Well, that's not true.
I'm Ryan Pollie, fine.
And this week we are talking about our 8th contributions to the 2007 time capsule, Edgar Wright's Hot Fuzz and MGMT's Oracular Spectacular. Plus, I'll test Ryan's knowledge of another culturally and historically significant moment of 2007. And then I'll be talking to playwright MJ Halberstadt, who's contributing Tracy Letts' August Osage County to the time capsule. So let's get into it. You want to talk about Hot Fuzz a little bit?
Oh yeah, that's right. We have really great art to talk about tonight.
We do.
Yeah, Hot Fuzz. Wow, what a movie. Go ahead, start us off. Talk to me about Hot Fuzz.
Well, Hot Fuzz, I mean, heck, part 2 of the Cornetto trilogy. A really weird and unique and special little set of movies. For anybody who doesn't know, Shaun of the Dead.
Or at least 2 or 3 of them.
We're gonna
hot take.
We're gonna have
hot
to.
Take.
That is a hot take
hot
for
take.
me personally. Is this about to turn into a World's End episode by accident?
No. But that movie
is my
does
favorite
not hold a candle to the other 2
of these movies.
That is absurd. That is, oh my God, that is literally not acceptable within objective terms.
You should see how hard I just spiked my my thing.
You're kidding. You're making a joke.
No, I love that movie. That movie is so special.
You're doing this just to get a rise. Oh yeah, sure. I would love to hear about how special that movie is to you, but to say that it is better than the other 2.
All right.
Okay. Anyway, tell me more about Hot Fuzz.
We're getting too deep into it too quickly. So, Edgar Wright and Simon Pegg and Nick Frost, these 3 fantastic British comedians and writers and performers, they had a fantastic sitcom called Spaced. Have you seen any of Spaced?
A little bit.
Terrific show.
Not enough.
Really special, sort of like...
It felt like treading backwards a little bit. So it didn't work on me compared to like the high art form that I've been introduced to it through. So it felt like a little watered down, but I bet it's great.
So what those guys did with that show was, they took the sort of very slacker archetype, which would go on to be one of their real sort of hallmarks, was telling these stories of slackers in England, and then bringing these American genre sort of influences into that and sort of mashing those 2 ideas together. So Spaced does that with the slackers who are imitating the Matrix and just doing all the sort of nerdy references. Then he makes his technically second feature, but first that anyone has seen, which is Shaun of the Dead with the same team. Again, slackers going up against zombies. And then everyone said, so these guys just make movies about slackers doing genre things. And they didn't like the sound of that, Edgar Wright and Simon Pegg. They decided that they needed to go completely in the opposite direction. And so they told the story of the least slacker character possible, who is the protagonist of Hot Fuzz, who is, what is his technical? He's a cop. Lieutenant, sergeant, detective. I don't know what these words mean.
Angle. He's a prick.
Nick Angle Angel. Nick Angel. Is that what the name is?
I think it's Nick Angel.
Nick Angel, yes.
Yeah.
So they keep
Lieutenant Angle.
So they keep the whole genre parody aspect, or not parody, but sort of taking American genre conventions and injecting them into this British sphere. And that is really one of, I think, the special elements of this whole series, and something that Edgar Wright has said is they talk about remaking his stuff in America, or they have gotten.
Oh my God.
Yeah, they got his.
Yuck.
They have tried to do Spaced as an American series.
What if you did an American thing, but in America this time?
That's exactly Edgar Wright's point. Is like, why would you do this? There's no sort of irony to it.
Well, because Edgar Wright expresses himself within that form and with that line of thinking and thinks that's what it is, but the rest of the world gets to realize that he's genius no matter what. So instead of like, oh, Edgar, let me make this in America, I'm sure they just like, give me your intellectual property.
Oh,
you know, and he's like, but it doesn't work that way because that's not the point.
Yeah.
But I think those people probably are just like, just let us do it.
So Hot Fuzz being the story of Nick Angel, who is this hyper competent, hyper focused, hyper good at his job cop who is making all the cops in London look bad. And he gets shipped off to rural England to...
How's the hand?
So how do you talk about Hot Fuzz? It's a perfect movie. That's the I've had trouble coming at this a little bit because we can...
And is that your... Yeah. Coming at it from a direction or coming at it as far as picking it apart?
Well, as far as picking it apart, as far as like how to dig into this thing.
There's no romance story.
Sure.
And that's a huge, huge, huge difference besides the slacker thing.
That's fair.
From Sean and from World's End.
And from World's End.
I think it suffers. And I think it suffers because of that. But I think the whole point was these cop movies are about the bromance in the same way that I Love You Man is about, you know, it's like, it's that kind of reach. It's like, well, we don't need a romance, but I would argue it suffers without it. I think that character from the beginning could have, I think the relationship dynamic of Shaun of the Dead, which by the way, my order of the three is Shaun, Hot Fuzz, and at World's End, like pretending as if the Cornetto trilogy was just two movies. I do think it is that low compared, which it's still an Edgar Wright film, and without Shaun of the Dead and without Hot Fuzz, that film, I'd be like, dude, this guy needs to do more. You know, like I'm still a fan of At World's End, but I think that movie feels like a B movie from a director that can make movies feel so sharp and so well done on a tight budget. At World's End feels like awful FX and like it just feels, I don't know, it feels thrown together and lazy to me. Anyway, I'll let you defend World's End for sure. Well, we have to. Yeah. I want to hear what you think about it. But I think that my point here is that I think so many of the funny moments in Shaun of the Dead have to do with the fact that he's a shitty or trying to be a better boyfriend. You know, like, and a better son. And like, in this film, he's very like isolated from the get. And it's about him letting this one guy in. He's like just Nick Frost at his best, a giant puppy dog that everybody who watches wants to hug, but he plays a character that just doesn't like dogs, or like, you know, like it's something like that. It's like, oh, this guy just doesn't like, oh, that's so frustrating. But eventually comes around and it saves the whole day. It's just a lovely story. And the humor, I think, is on par with anything he's ever done. It is so sharp. It's still in that stylistic thing that I think he's migrated from, that sharp cut thing. And I don't know if that's part of the Cornetto thing or not.
Well, it's also...
I'd like to say no, because it's in Scott Pilgrim.
Scott Pilgrim is made out of that stuff, yeah.
Yeah, so I guess it's something he's, which I get, like if you're known for one thing and you're like, yeah, but like I you know, that doesn't mean I have to do it all the time just because you liked when I did it.
So to be clear for the listener, you're referring to sort of the really intensely edited, very sharp whip pans and cuts on action and creating these sort of hyper-kinetic almost little moments within your larger story. So, and usually with some sort of ironic twist to it, like you're getting action editing of a guy just washing his hands or whatever.
Yeah, or like a gun loads, another gun loads, and then somebody fills a cup of coffee.
Sure.
Or, you know, it's like, but and that's a great way to put it, Ethan. And I think the other element that I've always appreciated is the audio too, and like it's just like ASMR, like kind of like really sharp, close effects as far as audio is concerned. And he's a brilliant filmmaker, and you know, I see a lot of this as like I don't want to assume anything about these people, but like, you know, the whole idea of like, let's do this, but slackers versus the idea of like, what if we did this, but it was like us? And I wonder how much of it was that, like what Nick Frost, because like I've watched bloopers on both Hot Fuzz and Sean, and like just they're so close, and they're such close friends that like I know they meet up probably and work on creative projects, but I think they probably also meet up and like go to the pub and like fuck with each other maybe.
Totally.
And so that's where that whole like autobiographical element I think comes in, and what makes it really special to me, even if I'm totally wrong here. There seems to be a large chunk of their relationship, especially with their comfortability on camera, what they're writing, what they're bringing to the screen, and this sense of trust that relates to music, in my opinion, when it comes to like a band. It's like that trust is there for these three people, Nick Frost, Simon Pegg, and Edgar Wright, to like know that these other two people have their back at any moment, and like they can really express themselves in a really successful way. And that's super special, I feel like, probably, right? To, you know, from actor to writer to, you know, to have that such a close nut, and everybody's so funny too, that it must be a rare, probably more rare example.
I think that the friendship between the three of them is the really key element to these movies, and it is what I think makes it feel like a trilogy is the relationship between Pegg and Frost. Is, you know, it's a trilogy in the loosest possible way. These movies are not technically related at all. They are. It's called the Three Flavors Cornetto trilogy as a basically joke on Kieslowski's Three Colors trilogy. This classic of towering European highbrow art film. They're goofing on it by doing their Cornetto ice cream trilogy, and so this is technically named after some flavor of ice cream, and I forget which one. Blue. Yes, it's the blue. It is the blue one. But you follow these two guys, you fall in love with them on Spaced, or you fall in love with them on Sean, and you see them as these slacker best friends. Then you get to Hot Fuzz and you get to see them fall in love with each other. It's a parody of...
Oh, you're right.
It's a parody of Point Break.
That's the payoff, is watching them fall in love over and over again. That is so sweet. That's like a Linklater concept.
But then, and this is part of what I think makes World's End so effective, is you have the frustration. You are seeing them having already fallen out of love. And they're playing on all of the hours of association we have between them, and to a really tragic end in that movie, which is part of what makes it feel very unsatisfying, is they are angry at each other that whole movie, and by the time they have reunited...
Who does Nick Frost play again? Can you give me the main conflict there one more time?
Yeah, so...
I know who Simon Pegg is. He's like a fuck up who's been self-centered and like has hurt them a bunch of times and asked for money or fucked things up, but he's also lovable and like was their like high school leader, and he's trapped in like youth and wanting to get the band back together one last time. But who's Nick Frost?
So, and this is now we're in World's End.
At World's End.
Not at World's End, the World's End. This is
World War Z.
This is just sort of a Cornetto trilogy conversation, I think.
It's fine.
It is wonderful because I love these movies and I love World's End and just want to talk about it.
Okay, good. Good.
So Frost plays the best friend, childhood best friend of Simon Pegg, and they were drinking buddies together. And Simon Pegg's character, years earlier, has, I believe...
crashed his car?
Well, he crashes his car and then he takes off. He runs away and he leaves Frost to deal with the consequences. And so as an adult, Frost has given up drinking and is only drinking water. And
Frost is at like a job, right? Like kind of like a office building type of job.
And he has to be pulled away and pulled back into this adventure. And it's the journey of them hitting the catharsis of needing to scream at each other for this betrayal all the years earlier. And
sure. But then an I love you too is more so what we're waiting for.
It lands at an I love you, and then it lands at something quite bleak, but I don't want to ruin that for anybody who hasn't seen that movie or hasn't seen it in a while. This is the most satisfying, probably conventionally, of the three, because it's the only one that doesn't end.
Because he doesn't end up in a shed.
He doesn't end up as a zombie in a shed or with them divided. It ends up with them heading off for more adventures, which is fun.
Yeah, and tell me about the last scene of Hot Fuzz. How does it end to you visually, but also symbolically? Or like, what does it imply for the future of these characters? Because I was struggling with that a little bit.
Well, I mean, theoretically, the major threat is eradicated. The sort of dilemma of the movie.
Yeah.
And so, are they just going to be solving small town crimes? Are they going to be
in? Are they staying? They're staying in the town, right? They're not going. He's not going back to London.
Yeah, I think so. Yeah.
So it's like a rebuild. Yeah. A classic, just ending through and through with a bow.
It'd be interesting to see what the sequel to this movie could possibly be.
Does his dad die? No, he just shoots him in the toe.
Yeah. I don't think anybody really.
They just book everybody.
Dies. Yeah.
They just. Well, Skinner, even he
gets booked
through the. You
see him at the end.
Yeah, it's like that's right. Okay, well then. Okay, fine. That's
okay. Fine.
Yeah, I find this movie to be. Within people that I've known in my life, way less celebrated than Shaun of the Dead. Way less. I find that Shaun of the Dead is celebrated like greatly within people that I know, around people that I know. And then this movie, they're like, what? A little bit. Why do you think that is?
Well, I think Shaun of the Dead kind of came out of nowhere. It became this huge cult hit and people were...
It was first.
Yeah.
Right.
Yep. And people were telling each other about it, and it had all the support of like George Romero was talking about it, Peter Jackson was talking about it, and so this is it's a sophomore work. It's always going to be held up in comparison to the other thing, and it lacks, I think, a little bit of the trademark that both Shaun of the Dead and World's End have, which is the thing at the beginning that tells you what the entire movie is going to be. Do you know what I'm talking about in Shaun of the Dead?
Do you mean the credit scene of Shaun of the Dead?
No, I'm saying in both Shaun of the Dead and World's End, there's a scene where they're like, okay, this is what we're going to do. And they make a plan to go drinking at a lot of pubs in World's End. And I can't remember what it is in Shaun of the Dead.
Yeah.
We're going to do this today. This is blah, blah, blah. And then it turns out to be a winking telling you what the entire plot of the movie is going to be. This doesn't have that. It's a little bit less of like a Swiss watch that way.
Okay.
Nick Angel is not a particularly
lovable character
or relatable.
Yeah, relatable's maybe stronger because I'm not sure how much Shaun is lovable, because he doesn't do. He's frustrating, not in a way where it's like, man, like I haven't done anything with my life, and it's like, well, forget capitalism and forget productivity, blah blah blah. He's like Shaun uses it as an excuse to not like allow himself to be a good person to other people, and like uses it to like bog him down. Where in this film, he's frustrating like the majority of the film.
Yeah.
Like his coming to Nick moment doesn't happen for a good, like until like maybe even the finale, you could argue.
And not nearly as frustrating though as he is in World's End, where he is a absolutely repulsive character that you're being asked to buy in on.
Yeah, true.
And so that's probably a big part of your distaste for that movie too.
When does Scott Pilgrim come in after Hot Fuzz, between World's End and Hot Fuzz?
That's it, yeah.
With like the best VFX. Oh my gosh, perfect. And so when you finally make a sci-fi and it looks like it is on a channel that goes by the same name, it is not acceptable. It's not acceptable. It's not acceptable to have your VFX be better in Shaun of the Dead than in this film.
In this film? We're on World's End now.
No, in World's End. Yeah, it's not acceptable.
It's not acceptable. I was just looking at my notes.
And the last of the trilogy, the finale.
I don't think the effects are as bad as you.
It was made with like $10. And the story worse than the other two. That's not how you finish a trilogy.
It is an intentionally
and you like it better than
it's an intentionally frustrating end to the trilogy. I think it is the most emotionally affecting of the movies. I think when I first saw that movie, World's End,
the ending is. What about the ending? Not the relationships. The ending with the aliens. Is that what you found effective?
No,
the relationship stuff.
Well, okay,
Yeah.
but
Fair.
I when I first
The alien stuff I thought was silly.
It's all serving a metaphor.
Go on.
Well, this is not the World's End episode.
It's fine. No. Well, you can call this. You can call it Oracular Spectacular / Hot Fuzz and the Cornetto
Also,
trilogy.
you keep saying Oracular. It's Oracular, is it not?
Maybe. I don't know what either of those words mean.
Oracular Spectacular. Well, I don't know. Neither do I. But it is oracular, not ornacular.
So let's get back to At World's End.
Let's get back to At World's End.
Or is it In World's End?
So, I mean, I have written a whole essay on the World's End. If anybody cares to go see my cogent thoughts about this that I spent weeks laboring on instead of just trying to sort of remember it.
Not what this podcast
Not
is
what
about.
this podcast is about.
No.
So the central metaphor of that movie is that you come back to your hometown and feel so absolutely alienated that it's as though everybody has been replaced by robots. And it then ends with the supreme intelligence arguing that humanity is all made up of Gary, the main character in that movie. We are all these sort of self-destructive beings that can't stay out of our own way, and why are any of us worth anything? And then he has to basically stick up for humanity's right to be fuck-ups. So they're using the sci-fi thing, I think, effectively. And do you want to rebut that, or can I tell you how that connects to Hot Fuzz? I win.
Only emotionally. Like only personally and emotionally. When you say using the sci-fi genre effectively to make that point, I 100% disagree. Because you have these aliens set up that are not really they're doing like some weird takeover and then willing to have a conversation with him. And then, I don't know. It felt like a Red State finale turn, or I'm trying to think of something else where for our listeners, like another comparison besides Red State, but maybe for listeners of this podcast, kind of like a Sunshine turn, or like something where it was like, oh, okay, now we're gonna talk about the meaning of life and the meaning of human existence. And I think they used a metaphor too far, and I think they stretched it out over an entire film, and they used a genre lazily, and it didn't line up the way these films line up. I think that if I'm going to go see a cop movie and I see Hot Fuzz, I'm like, wait, hold on. I've seen so many cop movies. What's up with this being in an English town? Do they not have guns? It's so brilliant to me. Yeah. And Shaun of the Dead, I don't think you needed zombies at all. It just happened to be the vehicle, I think, for them to tell the story of their culture and their friendship more. Personally, I think zombies was the vehicle for them to just be oozing with content.
Yeah.
And that's why it makes it the best one for me, is because it could have been anything. I think they were just give me a vehicle. We have so many ideas. We honed it in with space. We're ready to go. And I think the jokes and the character building in that film is untouchable. And I think with Hot Fuzz, it really works. And they really drive it home in making Nick Frost obsessed with American cop films. And they don't let you be intellectual about comparing it to American cop films, because they don't let you get to that point, because they're like, no, let's not do that. Let's show them American cop films in the film to draw that juxtaposition. Yeah. And I think that benefits them artistically. I think that's where Edgar Wright gets good. That's where he gets pop, is knowing that he's not making the Color trilogy. He's making the Cornetto trilogy. And when he clues his audience in and really plays with that dynamic of knowing that he's a British filmmaker making British things within an American context, he really gets it right. And I think at World's End, he throws all of that out and tells this personal story with this loose metaphor and genre tie-in to make a movie that I've never been more excited for. I mean, I've said that millions of times, but oh my God, the third Edgar Wright film with that cast. When are we going to get another one? Have we gotten, that's a rare thing. And I think it was wasted. I was disappointed.
Well, something that the first two movies in the trilogy have that World's End doesn't is a very specific and loving tribute to a very clear genre. The zombie movie, the cop movie. I guess it's basically the alien invasion movie, but it's not as cut and dry, sort of bold-faced.
Mixed with maybe The Hangover?
Sure.
Let's go on a big night.
Sure. Yeah. The Into the Night
but
movie.
never reaches the peak of either of those genres, or the genre that it's secretly being.
The genre is,
I think it's confused across the board, that movie.
So we keep talking about Hot Fuzz in terms of the American influence. Mm-hmm. One thing that I was thinking about during this that I think you and I both also respond to in movies is this. It's kind of a folk horror movie. It's very Wicker Man.
Oh, yeah. No, totally. I love that element about it. You're absolutely right. I would love to talk more about that.
So
that whole evil cult conspiracy before conspiracy theory became I don't want anything to do with that because it exists in this really pervasive American way that I want. This was back when conspiracy theory was fun. You're right. This was and I love that shit.
It's a cult movie. Basically, it's a movie about a cult of a town, a cult of elders who are so
for the greater good,
who are so devoted to their town. That does remind me of when Jim Broadbent says we're going to make Sanford great again. I said I don't like hearing that.
Wait, what is that a reference to?
In this movie, Hot Fuzz,
they say he says Sanford's the town.
We're going to make Sanford great again.
Oh, but it creeps you out because it was Trump.
It creeps me out because a decade later.
Sorry, you had to give me one more try.
Should we start over?
The whole podcast? I feel if we're going to go from the beginning of that sentence, we might as well go from the beginning of the podcast.
No, I think so.
So I have a lot of things to say about Hot Fuzz.
Good idea. And a lot of things to say about World's End.
World's End. I think it's more fun to argue than to say Hot Fuzz is so great because for our listeners' sake, again, Ethan and I both think this movie Hot Fuzz is real great. That's kind of it. Yeah, that's the long and the short of it. And then from there it becomes how do we argue about things? But I think Hot Fuzz does struggle a little bit. I do. I don't think it's as oh man, it's hard to treat art this way. But I think that if I had an alien species who for some reason was man, I keep hearing about this Edgar Wright guy. And he hadn't seen any Edgar Wright movies, but was I think it's going to really play to my sensibilities as this alien creature. Everyone keeps recommending it. I think I'd go Sean. And I think that's where you can pick it apart is I think the reasons for it, and I said it before, are because sometimes when you have collaboration in art and you're brimming with this energy that it's a faucet that cannot be turned off, all you need is a couple yeses to create something that's never been created before. Because you're brimming with this collaborative support and this humor and this angle, and I know this dude Edgar and my other friend Simon and my friend Nick, they're writing something together and they're just laughing all day and drinking and writing and they're going to make a movie. You just can't turn it off. And I think purely for that reason, I would argue personally that is the only reason that Hot Fuzz suffers is the warm water or the hot water is getting a little warmer. It's that hot lava water is becoming more a little colder over time. And I think that's it. That's all it is, because I think it holds a candle next to it. I think without Sean, it would be the best one for me. It's not because it's not good. It's because Sean just happens to exist and is also an expansion on similar, I would argue, motifs, character development, humor. I think it plays within its own sandbox to a way of saying we're not hiring new people. No, we're doing the thing again. We're not hiring a new actor. We're not we're taking the team back, but we're doing something else, and we're gonna let the faucet run, and it runs so well, and it's so beautiful, and Hot Fuzz is so good. I would just argue that it's just a little bit. It's one after the one after the magic one.
That's right. This is my least favorite Cornetto movie. Is a silly,
but I don't think
a silly thing to say about a movie I find basically perfect. These are all great movies.
No, that says kind of nothing to me. Knowing what you think about World's End. But to your audience, if they hadn't listened to everything before that and you started off saying that, you're just don't go back on Twitter, because I'm gonna harass you about that World's End claim.
Well,
you're wrong about that Edgar Wright movie.
Is that the tweet you're gonna send? I can't wait.
And everyone's gonna flip out because everybody's talking about it already. It's hip to talk about if At World's End is good.
Well, geez. I mean, should we throw Hot Fuzz in the time capsule on that note?
You give it a chuck. Throw. I'll catch it.
Yeah. Oh, it broke. Never mind. It's not in the time capsule.
I made it in there.
We'll put it back together. Do you want to talk about the Kids' Choice Awards?
Did I even know that we were going to talk about the Kids' Choice Awards?
No, I just decided to take a really hard turn to the pop quiz portion.
I think you're giving me a taste of my own medicine here. And the answer is yes.
Well, that's terrific, because the Kids' Choice Awards were held on March 2007, which is a...
They were held on March 2007.
They were held on March 2007. And I would love to give you 4 categories from it and have you try to guess who the winner was. So again, it's a lot of 2000. It's a lot of 2006 stuff, because we are looking at the award ceremonies that you would have been watching in 2007. So we are talking about movies that did not come out this year, but hosted by Justin Timberlake in March 2007. Nickelodeon. It's the Nickelodeon Kids' Choice Awards.
Okay, Nickelodeon Kids' Choice Awards. Thank you.
JT, he hosts, and he also wins Favorite Male Singer. Mm-hmm. So big night for him. Mm-hmm. I'd love to tell you the list of slimed celebrities, because this is the best. These are the celebrities who I guess got slime dumped on them in March 2007. Jackie Chan and Chris Tucker. Presumably they're promoting a Rush Hour.
Rush Hour 2?
You tell me. I've never seen any of those movies. Mandy Moore, Tobey Maguire.
Slimed.
Tobey Maguire slimed for Spider-Man 3, I would guess. Steve Carell slimed for... What is he getting
totally
slimed for? It's
The Office.
The Office is in...
40-Year-Old Virgin.
No, The Office is in season 3, yeah. 40-Year-Old Virgin's 3 years ago.
Superbad's 2007. It's 3 years ago, 40-Year-Old Virgin? Jeez.
40-Year-Old Virgin's 2005.
Holy moly. Judd Apatow was the entire 2000s. I remember those movies being boom, boom, boom.
Well, it's, boom, boom, boom within 2 years.
I mean, the film industry moves slow, but
Vince Vaughn.
He must have so much money.
Vince Vaughn got slimed, and Nicole Kidman got slimed, which is such a strange concept.
Hold on. Old School 2006?
Oh, Old School's much earlier than 2006. Wedding Crashers is 05.
All right. Give me some categories.
Favorite athlete. The favorite athlete among kids. Here are your 4 options. LeBron James, Alex Rodriguez, Shaquille O'Neal, and Tiger Woods. Who do the kids choose?
LeBron James.
Shaquille O'Neal.
That is not true.
Shaquille O'Neal is not the favorite athlete of kids in 2007.
How could it be?
I don't know.
LeBron James is way younger, and he's a Superman.
But
Wow. Okay, I'm wrong. I already bought myself something on eBay, so whatever.
But Shaq is, he's a big cartoon character. He's a great big kid himself, and he played a genie. And I don't know why in 2007 this is all relevant. All right. What was the kids...
Rigged.
You're telling me that you don't think the Kids' Choice Awards are rigorously vetted?
I don't want to say this. I don't want to say this on air, but I have some problems with that first category.
Okay.
I don't want to speak to the political situation behind the doors at Nickelodeon Kids' Choice Awards, but I do know that I know some people who know some people who know
some people
that some stuff as some people know that some stuff has gone on there. And for Shaquille O'Neal to win that year, I'm not saying is a huge deal, but is something that like I'd like to get back to our listeners on.
I can't tell if you're kidding or not.
I'm kidding.
All right. What was the kids' favorite TV show? Was it
Dark Souls?
Was it Dark Souls
3?
Drake and Josh, Fear Factor, The Sweet Life of Zach and Cody, or American Idol?
Did you put in Fear Factor?
Mm-mm. It's a nominee in 2007.
So Rogan was there?
Yep.
At the Choice Awards? I gotta text him about that.
Don't,
because he pays for our show.
Don't do that. Don't say that horrible thing.
Oh man, Zach and Cody, Sweet Life, and what Drake
and Josh, Fear Factor, Sweet Life, American Idol.
So I'm pretty sure that Drake and Josh and Sweet Life are both Disney.
They are.
Or ABC.
Oh, those were Disney shows.
Fear Factor was MTV.
Well, I say that so confidently. Let me see.
Fear Factor was MTV. And the last one was what?
American Idol.
Idol was NBC.
Oh, no. Drake and Josh was on Nickelodeon. Pardon me. Pardon my error.
Drake and Josh was on Nickelodeon?
Yeah.
Then that one.
American Idol was the favorite show of the kids.
Huh.
I'm sorry to tell you.
No, it's okay. I just thought that Viacom... I'm not sure Viacom Universal is a thing. I don't know if those two companies are connected. Interesting. Okay. All right. Whatever. Kelly Clarkson. Clay Aiken. I remember.
All right. I would love to ask you who the favorite voice in an animated movie was.
Jerry Seinfeld, B-movie. Next question.
You're not right. I'm sorry.
Was he nominated?
No.
Oh, that's because we're a year early. You're saying
that's
2006
right.
movies.
Yep.
For our listeners, I know my 2007 knowledge.
So it's, let's see, Bruce Willis for Over the Hedge, Julia Roberts for The Ant Bully.
What?
Ashton Kutcher for Open Season, or Queen Latifah for Ice Age The Meltdown. Who do the kids love?
Latif.
You did it. You got that one right.
Yeah.
The kids love Queen Latifah in Ice Age The Meltdown.
I mean, she has a phenomenal voice when it comes to comedy. Ice Age 2 catching a real winner there.
Well, good on you. So, and now we're...
And the other ones... Okay, so it's Over the Hedge. What was the second one was like... What was the second movie? Ant-Man 2?
The Ant Bully.
What's that?
He's a boy who bullies ants.
Jennifer Gardner?
Julia Roberts.
Julia Roberts was not the ant bully.
No, it's a boy.
Surely she was the ant bully's mother.
Or perhaps the queen of the ants. I don't know. I haven't seen that movie either. Can I tell you who Julia Roberts played in The Ant Bully?
Can you give me a multiple choice?
No, I'm just going to tell you. She played Hova.
Oh, she was Jay-Z.
She was Hova. Nicolas Cage played Zoc. And Regina King.
Zach?
No, Regina King was Creela. And obviously Bruce Campbell was Fugax. And we know this.
Well, Regina King was big on the voiceover scene at that time.
Yeah, as Creela. And then Lily Tomlin, of course, as Momo. This movie sounds like a lot.
Oh my God, I forgot that Lily Tomlin was Momo.
Yeah, no, it's important to remember that. Can you tell me what won Best Picture of the Year among the kids? Was it?
Yeah.
Big Mama's House 2, or Click, or Pirates of the Caribbean Dead Man's Chest, or Night at the Museum? What do the kids like?
Final answer.
No, you're wrong. It's Pirates of the Caribbean 2.
Shit, I forgot it was 2. I thought maybe it was 3.
The kids loved Pirates of the Caribbean Dead Man's Chest with
Of course they did.
Davy Jones and his...
What is up with Nickelodeon just jocking Disney this year? Jeez.
Jeez Louise. This season of What a Year is brought to you by Mubi, who are, yes, it is still true, they are my absolute favorite streaming service. And at this point, you are either the kind of person who skips the ads or the kind of person who doesn't, and I am not going to try and make you into someone who you aren't. So all I'm going to say is that if you are a stick with the ads person, you get a gold star on the sticker chart of life. Thank you for listening to me talk about Mubi. And speaking of Mubi, they are a curated streaming service showing exceptional films from around the globe. They premiere a new movie every single day. It might be from an iconic director or an emerging auteur. Either way, there is always something new to discover, and it's all hand-selected by people who love and care about movies. So you are in very good hands. In a world where even some of the best streaming services are full of a lot of junk, Mubi is out here with all killer, no filler. And as they like to say, it's like your own personal film festival streaming anytime, anywhere. Right now, in the U.S., all these titles are in the U.S. library. They've got Entertainment, which is a Rick Alverson movie. He is one of the sort of most perversely compelling filmmakers out there. He makes these movies that are all somewhere on the spectrum of nightmarishness, and Entertainment is just the right kind of unsettling. It's a collaboration with Greg Turkington and his Neil Hamburger persona, who's this bizarre anti-comedy lounge comic. And it's a road movie, and it's genuinely Lynchian, to use a terribly overused term. It's just the best. And then talk about range. They have The General, the Buster Keaton movie that's basically Mad Max Fury Road, but with trains. They have a movie that is very special to me, Los Angeles Plays Itself, which is this epic video essay about all the ways that LA has been used on screen across a century of Hollywood history. It is so fascinating. I have cited that movie so many times in so many places. And they have Burning, one of the best movies of 2018. And 2018 was a stacked year. This movie, it's based on a Haruki Murakami short story, and he is not an easy writer to capture on film, but they did it so beautifully. This movie is eerie and scary and disorienting, and it's long, but it uses the length to its advantage to wrap you up in the world of this movie. And again, it's just the best. All these movies are the best. Mubi is the best, and you know what else is the best? Listeners to What a Year can try Mubi for free for 30 days at mubi.com/whatayear. That's mubi.com/whatayear. You'll get a whole month of great cinema for free, and why not treat yourself to that small good thing in this life, So I will let you think on that. And in the meantime, back to the show.
MGMT?
Is that our pivot point? Is it time? I just got comfy.
Good.
I've got my feet up now. Do you want to talk
Good.
about?
Let's talk about the most doomed project to ever grace indie rock.
Pardon me. Tell me more about that.
You are so pardoned.
I'm ready. Let's hear it.
A band, MGMT, Wesleyan kids, very, very encouraged to do their weird stuff. Very encouraged to think highly critically about capitalism and money and success and fame, so much so that they may have written one of the top philosophical songs about fame and success, about what it is to get what you want and the things that you might miss in return before they even hit the amount of fame that's coming to them.
Which song are we talking about there?
Time to Pretend.
Lead off track, right?
Yes.
Yes. A song that is synonymous with 2007 to me. Not that I listened to this album then, but you hear that opening and it's like, this is what you use in a movie when you want to say, it's 2007, baby.
Well, this is usually you. But here I am back. To quote a song written by to-be famous people making art, who know that they are writing songs for fun that can connect with millions. And then they write other songs for fun that won't connect with many people. I'll miss the playgrounds and the animals and digging up worms. I'll miss the comfort of my mother and the weight of the world. I'll miss my sister, miss my father, miss my dog and my home. I'll miss the boredom and the freedom and the time spent alone. So I think of this band as prissy rich kids. I think of this band as annoying on stage, telling everybody, why don't you like the music that didn't make us millions of dollars? We're going to sit on stage and not play any of our hits. We're going to sign to Capitol and then try to be a psychedelic outfit that doesn't give the people what they want. But yet, on this record, they hit 3 to 4 tracks that
undeniable.
It did something, whether they cared about it or not, and it seems very, very increasingly clear that they do not care about these songs. They do not care for the genre that they participated in. They do not care to be associated with pop music. They only care to be weirdo freaks, and they shall use that money made from the pop music to buy cars and the models and miss the time spent alone and make weirdo folk music and yell at their crowds and not play nice and float into oblivion. And yet we will always look back on this record and hear the songs that they hate as some of the best songs, personally, I've heard from this genre, from this era. Wow. Impactful, emotional, and maybe they're laughing to each other, but there's some humanity in there that on those tracks specifically. Sure, if you hear this record and say fuck kids, fuck Time to Pretend, fuck Electric Feel, I like the weirdo stuff, I'm like, cool, go buy Congratulations. It's even better on that one, because they continue to do it. You can continue to follow that if you like that band, if we're talking about two bands, two parts of this band, if you like that band, there's plenty of it for you. If you like the band that I'd like to talk about a little bit tonight, there's nothing else for you. And I'm not sure there ever will be. And I think they will die pretending they're too cool for those songs and not connect with the fact that those songs are masterpieces. So that's my opening thing. Would love to hear your thoughts about MGMT.
Well, first of all, I just remembered Time to Pretend listed as the 493rd best song of all time by Rolling Stone magazine.
Rolling Stone. I knew it.
Just squeaking into the top 500.
That's so Frickian.
So
David Frick.
David,
shout out.
Frickian Frick. This is the first album that we have chosen, that you have chosen, that we have talked about, that strikes me as just fun to listen to. Like I listened to
through and through.
Well, the first half, certainly. The second half, when it tips more into the psychedelia, like you were saying. But I mean, you know, like you're saying, Time to Pretend, which I don't know what it is. Something. What I got thinking about with Time to Pretend is I don't know where I have heard this, in what movies that I have heard it, that it got so locked into, like, this is the song that can signify a time in history. It's a song that became huge and popular because it was not like anything else. And because of that, it got used a lot. It got used in media. And so it got... Sleepyhead. It got locked into its time by virtue of not sounding like its time. It's now emblematic of its time because it didn't sound like anything else.
It sounds exactly like its time.
It's
to me. That is such a great point because, you know, I would argue the opposite point without having that insight. It is so a moment where people start to use synthesizers because the 80s were so cheesy to us growing up, and they sounded so poorly produced and ridiculous. And the 90s were all about rock, and they were all about guitars, whether it was No Doubt or Creed or Pearl Jam or Limp Bizkit, or it was rock music through and through in the mainstream American media. Obviously, I'm limiting this to my personal experience. And synthesizers, maybe Dan Deacon did, maybe some other fringe artists existed in this space, but all of a sudden there was this new movement of using a synthesizer in a way that it was almost like self-aware, humorous. It was this new texture that we had always laughed at from 80s music, or referenced to this like false nostalgic way where we never grew up in the 80s, but we listened to 80s music like Take On Me or, you know, that kind of music and vibe to it because it sounded so different.
And we were doing the 80s dance. That was the throwback.
Exactly. It was fashionable. And so the synth was put on somebody's lap to create these new songs that had never been done with a synth before because it had been so long. That context had been so lost that all of a sudden it's like that cyclical thing where the only thing punk to do after you rebel against everything is to do the thing you're rebelling against. And
that's very deep.
I think about this a lot. I think about my friend who is sober, straight edge, punk, and has like Carly Rae Jepsen and Taylor Swift tattoos. And like within this, and they're trans, and they've had, their personality is such that they've had to rebel against so many things that they are the most punk person I know by far. And they have those pop artists, but tattooed, right? It's like this, it is such a cultural moment for me when I think about it, right? Because it's this thing, it's that, you know, can I take the cheesiest, a sound that is going to make you think of music that you hate, but make a song that you like? I think it's really, really cool. And they were at the start of that, and then they were just like, yeah, but we also like 13th floor elevators and like 60s psychedelic. And they were so bratty about rebelling against that music, which fine. If they didn't enjoy it, fine. But to yell at your crowds and to pout about it, nah.
What were they yelling at the crowds? You keep referencing this, but I have no context for it.
I'm not sure I have total context for it. I like to prepare for these things by digesting the art and not too much context, but I do remember hearing a lot about, I saw MGMT. Yeah, it was a trip, man. Like they just kind of sat on stage and like played us their new record and then like played part of their hits, but then like broke the computer they were playing it out of. Or, no, that's a lie.
Very Pete Townsend.
It's like that, yeah. It's a lie, but that's a total lie.
Okay,
made that up. But it's
Print
that kind of shit, right? Like How about this? I went and saw MGMT and they didn't play any of those tunes. What tunes? Oh, the tunes of a casual MGMT fan. Why did they do that? Because they wanted to prove that MGMT was more than these songs that had given them houses and cars and everything they had sang about, and their dream song had just come true. And the whole point, in this artistic, highbrow way, intellectual way, was, no, we're artists. Did you listen to the lyrics? Do you really think we're going to capitalize? Literally, think about that word, capitalize on our fame? Do you really think after hearing those lyrics, those songs that I just read, like, do you really think that we're going to do that? No, they're going to burn it all to the ground. And that's what they did. So that's why I started this off with a band doomed to fail. The youth are starting to change. They're not capitalistic oriented youth. They are rich Wesleyan kids who want to watch it all burn to the ground. And yet, they probably still have way more money than I do off of music.
I would suspect they do.
I think the rest, yeah, but the rest of their career definitely is like accepting those Spotify checks, but also like, fuck that. Fuck that. You like that song? Cool, you're a loser. That feels like meeting him at a party or meeting one of them at a party and then being like, oh dude, I love Time to Pretend, and then being like, see ya, I'm gonna do coke in the bath. Like, it's just like, I don't know. I that's the vibe I get from them, but all to them. They're it's like a Kaufman thing to a certain extent.
Really?
They're trying to prove a point.
Yeah.
Well, fuck commerce, fuck art, fuck all of it. Yeah, sure, we'll take a Coachella gig. We'll take a poop on the stage and play none of our hits and take your $1 million check. Not Kaufman-esque, but like, there's something there. There's something to performance within not performing what the audience wants, right? There's got to be a vast history with Dylan.
Sure.
Like, just come on down. Oh, yeah, you're coming down because of what you think I am? Like, I'm nothing like that. I don't know. It's like this artistic struggle that they seem to have from the get-go. But I remember hearing those songs in Ireland and clubs and parties, and it was now I listen back and hear the individual synth elements and the part writing and the counterpoint. At the time, it didn't matter what they were playing. It sounded like a rainbow. It sounded like joy. It sounded like elation. I didn't understand the lyrics that they were singing about that verse I read for a while. It just sounded like loveliness. 4 on the floor. Give me a hug. Let's jump up and down.
Well, and that's what
Maybe I'll meet a girl during this song.
Yeah.
I don't know. It's wonderful music.
Well, and that's where I was saying it's the fun to listen to album. It reminded me a little bit of some of the stuff I was reading about Justice when we were talking about that one, where people were talking about this as a duo that is writing this cerebral music that's making fun of the music that they're making, and I couldn't hear that at all in that. But I'm
not sure I do either.
I can hear it here much more easily.
Yeah. Okay.
Maybe it's just the lyrical quality.
But I'm not sure I can point to like many artists that they're referencing. Like, can you?
Oh, well, I mean, I don't know the history.
Is it like 80s Tears for Fears? Is it like Michael Jackson? Like, where did the synths come from? Where does the idea come from? Were there other artists at the time that they were like hip to? Not really. I don't know. It feels kind of weirdly singular for like a couple of Wesleyan kids.
Well, it does. It's a.
And for the listener, by the way, like the reason I talk about Wesleyan this way is like in 2007, these two white males had graduated from a northern eastern liberal arts school and had been making music and were signed to Capitol Records very young, right out of college. I'm in college at a northeastern school writing a synth-based, program-based orchestral record, hearing these kids do this and hearing it in every bar I go to, whether I'm in America or Ireland. So like this has got to be consciously, soaking into my experience of what it is to be an artist, what it is to be a musician, what the possibilities are for people who look like me and have a close experience to mine, which isn't, it's just something we take stock in. I mean, and that's why it sucks to be like someone from a worse situation and be like, where are there people who look like me and harm me that have success? And they have nobody. And here I am talking about being like going to a northern school and like doing what, but music is one of those kind of like, you never know. It's a little bit, it is so white and male, but it's a little bit more leveling maybe than other fields. And it was interesting to see these young kids like making a ton of money making synth pop music. So it was definitely leaking into what I was doing at the time, I think.
Well, and I think there's always something that's a little bit, I don't know. The band that met in college is sort of there's always something a little bit mythic about that, I think. Yeah. The band that met in school, because just by pure chance, the admissions process, here we go, all of a sudden we get art.
Yeah. And again, I think now that we're our age, looking back, it's because they're kids. Like the idea of meeting in college to me doesn't seem like, oh, you met pretty late in your life. It seems like it's like almost like meeting at high school.
Totally. Yeah.
So that adds to the myth of it too.
This feels like an album that is about youth. It's a youthful album, and maybe it's just the way, I mean, the youth are starting to change. Sure, it's all over it. I'm not exactly, turning over some massive insight here. But the whole thing, I mean, it feels like a young person's album, whatever that means. That's something people always say, and it's a very amorphous concept, but music by and for young people, I guess. And it's a cerebral record in sort of surprising ways. It is. Yeah.
It is. But it challenges me in the sense of like privileged philosophy type of vibe, or I don't know. Like I think at the time when I was hearing that they were being kind of pouty, it didn't strike the right chord with me regarding that. It was kind of like the ability to philosophize on commerce and art is a privilege because you wouldn't be able to do that if you were working 3 jobs and, et cetera, et cetera. So it felt like the points that they were trying to make, even though like as an artist now, I'm like, oh yeah, fuck major labels and fuck like expectations. And if I write a rap song that is a #1 rap song on the charts, that doesn't mean that I want to spend the next 10 years on rap music necessarily. Like I contain multitudes. I'm not your plaything. I'm not your puppet. I understand these philosophical arguments and I resonate with them. And yet at the time, whether it was media feeding it to me, and I don't know them personally, so I'm never going to drag them because I think the media is like the worst Instagram filter you could ever choose for getting information out to people. But at the time was hearing a lot about them challenging that and me being like, sure, you didn't play your hit songs at the show and it proved a point, sure. And yet you have a lot of fans that drove 2 hours to your show to bring their friend to see that song and love you and are giving you, I don't know. So it was conflicting in the moment. And I have this bad taste in my mouth about MGMT, even though like in 2008, just like I can hear these songs in my life and how much they resonated and how much they mean to me. So I'm not taking anything away from that. Those songs, specifically Time to Pretend, very specifically Time to Pretend. And then Under That Electric Feel and Kids for sure. But Time to Pretend specifically of just when he says, I miss the weight of the world, and your audience that's listening to your song is clued in on the feeling they've been feeling the whole time, listening to your art, that's magical. And I think that kind of communication through an instrument, through writing, through whatever, is just top of Top of the pops, Ethan.
Top of the pops.
These guys are geniuses, and they seem a little bit kind of like dickheads, but they're geniuses. And this record is a 10 out of 10 purely for those tunes. I think the rest of the record drags. No offense to them. That's a band they want to do. Those are the songs they want to make. Sure, do it. I'm not going to say they shouldn't do what they want to do. It's inconsistent. It's polarizing. Feels rushed. It feels like they're in two bands. Feels like they don't have their voice. But hey, neither did I at that age. So, and then they found their voice. And you know what? The voice was nothing like Kids or Time to Pretend. It was something else. They were experimenting and accidentally made some of the best pop music of all time, and then decided that their voice that they wanted to find had nothing to do with that. And that's fascinating. It's fascinating.
So it goes...
I wish them happiness.
Yes. It goes in the time capsule for the singles, basically.
No, but the conversation too, right?
Oh,
what
yeah.
a weird record.
Yeah, I know.
Yeah. But it was still like the end of that era of like, are you going to go buy the CD or are you just going to download the song? You know,
Yeah.
It was that era of like, I know what the record looks like. I don't own it, but I hear those 3 songs everywhere I go.
But it's still programmed very much as an album. It's a side A, side B record.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Is it?
Yes, because
Sure.
side A is where all the pop stuff is, and side B is where all the alienating
sure about
stuff
that?
is.
Yeah.
It's how it tracked to
Electric
me.
Feels side A, Kids is side A.
Yeah, totally. I mean, it struck me listening through this week as having a really distinct break point.
They have glimpses of it on side A though.
What?
They'll take you out of that world for a second. Yeah.
Sure.
Hit like a drum set and an acoustic guitar and and then you're just like, oh, this band is not just a synth pop band. Yeah, it goes in the time capsule. Yeah, no, because, geez, I mean, those songs. Yeah, well, the last singles record. That's why it goes in the time capsule.
Did it break everything else when it went in? Did it break Darjeeling Limited?
No, I don't know why there's so much metal in there, because it's mostly like records and movies.
Right. Well,
but it just feels like mostly metal.
Mm-hmm.
Did you put a car in there? Like, what'd you do?
I did.
That's not my fault.
Well,
you dumped your like extra silverware in there as well.
I just think it's important to have in the time capsule.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, sure.
All right, so I am so excited to welcome to the podcast a playwright that I've known for a bunch of years now, and somebody that I admire tremendously, MJ Halberstadt. To quote from MJ's own artistic statement, his work seeks to tell stories about characters who have qualities that make them part of an underrepresented population and whose humanity is more complex than that quality alone. And to quote from my own admiration, MJ's work is simultaneously attuned to real-world events and culture and narratively timeless. It's a hell of a trick, and it's something I really envy. MJ's play, The Usual Unusual, was adapted as a podcast through Speakeasy Stage here in Boston, so I would urge you to download that via your podcast app of choice. But we are not here to talk about MJ's work, but if you'd like to hear us do that, you can download an episode of the Boston Podcast Players, in which I wax rhapsodic about his work at far greater length. But instead, today, MJ has brought for our time capsule Tracy Letts' 2007 play August, Osage County, winner of the Pulitzer Prize for Drama. But first, I like to start by asking MJ, what is 2007 for you? How old were you? Sort of what's your association with that time?
Sure. Oh, Ethan, you give me life. You're the best.
You're the best.
2007 was the year that I graduated from high school, and I grew up on Long Island. And there's a picture of my incoming kindergarten class that I always had in mind when I was younger, because we had this banner. All the kids in the front row had a little banner that said class of 2007. And it just felt impossibly far away. It felt like the future. And now it feels like so long ago. I was an enthusiastic high school theater kid on Long Island in 2007. And the great tragedy of my senior year was that I was really expecting to get cast as the baker in my high school's production of Into the Woods. And I did not get the baker. I was cast as the wolf, which is a great role. In retrospect, I was being an immature brat about it. But that should give you an image of the type of kid I was in 2007. And I do have to mention, that I had to mention that I grew up on Long Island because New York City was just a train ride away. It was 39 minutes from the Rockville Center station to Penn Station. And I was really fortunate to have parents who brought me to the theater from a really young age. And I had a very great theater teacher in high school, and she took us to see lots of plays. And I happened to see August Osage County with my father and my sister. Now, my sister was not bit by the same theater bug that I was. She also saw plays with the family, but she wasn't someone who would necessarily go seeing plays on her own the way that I did. And I'll always remember that at the very end of August Osage County, and it's 3.5 hour runtime, the stage goes dark, and my sister said, "Wait, that's it?" And that for me was like a real indication that this was a very good play.
Well, I was going to start by just sort of asking what your first encounter was with the play. And so it was, you went in cold. Were you familiar with Tracy Letts' work at all?
No. I don't remember how I came to hear about it. I do remember that it felt important to me at the time that this was a play that wasn't developed in New York, that it came to us from Chicago. It was not a product of the New York theater scene. It was an import. And honestly, that was a new concept for me at the time. And I was preparing to leave New York. I was preparing to go to college in Boston and to start, I guess, for me, the play, also, in addition to being a remarkable text, it also marked a transition for me from somebody who thought of theater as a product of New York to theater as something that is made all over the place in all different ways. And, Chicago being one big piece of that.
So we should get into this play. I guess we're going to talk about the whole thing. We'll go ahead and spoil it. So if this is your way of dipping into and seeing if you want to read August Osage County, hit pause, go read it. You're not going to regret it. This thing, I mean, I guess I wanted to start by talking about it in the context of the sort of family play tradition, because it really called to mind to me immediately two plays that I then read Charles Isherwood's New York Times review, and they were the two plays he cited too. So that being Long Day's Journey into Night and Buried Child. And so I guess what I'm curious for your perspective on is what, if anything, elevates this and makes it not just another Long Day's Journey into Night, or does nothing need to elevate it? Is it just a great execution of a sort of classical form good enough?
It is an elevation. I'm trying to figure out why. There's something so audacious about this play at a time when new plays felt required to be small, this play showed up with 13 enormous roles and a 3-story set. It dared you to produce it.
Yeah.
It had to be a product of Steppenwolf because Steppenwolf is so artist-driven and is a company that comprises great actors and great playwrights and anchors its season around them, as opposed to what is the best guarantee to sell tickets. In the times that I've gone to Steppenwolf, I haven't been disappointed even when I've disliked the play that I've seen, because I'm like, yeah, okay, you swung that bat. You were aiming for the rafters. And I think a lot of theater at the time was becoming just so much more risk averse, which might be why I struggle to compare it to Barry Child and Long Day's Journey into Night, which feel like they came from different traditions than this play was responding to.
Interesting. So what would you see the tradition that this play is responding to?
The other plays that I remember seeing around that time, it was either big musicals or small plays.
Any small plays sort of jump to mind? I can't really place it in my own mind.
Did I see Race by David Mamet at the same month? And then I guess there was Equus around the same time.
Oh, the Daniel Radcliffe production?
The Daniel Radcliffe Equus. That must have been around the same time.
It was. It was in London in 2007. Yeah, that was when I saw it there.
Nailed it. And then it moved to Broadway. What else was around then? This was also the year that I believe In the Heights was off Broadway.
I'm trying to pull up the Tonys for this year. Right, In the Heights wins Best Musical at the same time that August Osage County wins Best Play. Other nominations for Best Play are Rock and Roll by Tom Stoppard, The Seafarer by Connor McPherson, and The 39 Steps by Patrick Barlow. Revivals of Boeing, The Homecoming, Dangerous Liaisons, and Macbeth, whoever was doing that year.
Yeah, I feel like playwrights tried to convince everyone that their plays were super producible, and here this play comes, and it's huge, and its characters are huge, and it's soapy, and it's steeped with poetic references, and there's violence, and it kind of exploded what new plays could be for me.
Isherwood also compared it to sitcoms, which I absolutely didn't pick up on the page, but does it have that rhythm on stage?
It does. I had to reread it last week to remind myself of it, and it doesn't. The performance of the play is much funnier than the script. There are lots of lines of dialogue that I remember being very, very funny when I watched the play, and on the page I don't immediately interpret them as jokes. It actually leads me to believe that whoever directs this play is doing a lot of the steering of what the play winds up feeling like. So I suspect that a lot of the comedy that we're noticing is a credit to its direction.
I want to sort of talk around the movie a little bit because the movie is notoriously not that great. Have you seen it?
I have, unfortunately.
Yeah, I watched the first 5 minutes today. But one thing I noticed about the trailer, which I did revisit, and I remember this bizarrely sort of peppy and zippy trailer, is how they play the sort of button on the trailer is they have the line about, you got to admire anybody who can make it work for as long as they did. And then the response is, he killed himself. And then I don't know if they actually have all the characters burst into laughter there, but it's not something that I read as zippy and sitcom-y on the page, but they sure make it look like it's meant to be.
Yeah, and I just had to look back to be absolutely sure. But John Wells directed the movie. What else do we know John Wells for? But he's not Anna DiShapiro.
No. No offense to John Wells, who I'm sure is a lovely person. It's surprised me to see this handed to him. Let's get to the movie when we get to, if we have to, and instead talk about the extraordinary original work itself. Something else that jumped out to me was the line about your gender discourse. Don't make this another one of your gender discourses. And then, which I believe is one of Bill's lines to Barbara. And so I started to sort of see the play through that lens after that. Every time there was some line about men are always like this and women are always like this, speaking of sitcom-y constructions, that sort of seemed to emerge as a theme. Do you feel like there's any particular sort of, I don't know, is there anything being said about gender in this play that is constantly talking directly about gender?
Yeah, I think there certainly is. This is a play that is very concerned with the ways that each of the generations that we see on stage is experiencing America. We hear quite a bit from Violet and Maddie Faye about just how violent their past was and how much trauma they experienced and the softness and the weakness that they perceive in younger generations. On the other hand, you have Jean, who balks at the idea that she's not in control of her relationship with oh God, who's the creepy
Steve
fiance? Steve. She's trying to defend to her parents that she was in control at that point, and they're not willing to accept that. I don't think the play necessarily accepts that either, but it is interesting to see how lessons of gender are being learned on stage by each of the generations in pretty different ways, and they're reaching different conclusions here.
Well, you sort of have the core family once the sort of paterfamilias has departed after the prologue. I love that there's a prologue in this script. You never see that. It's established as such sort of a literary bona fide to it. Yeah. Then what you're left with is a blood relation line that is all women, and the men that sort of orbit around them. And the men tend to be very sort of ineffectual or sort of embarrassing in their own ways, and the women are the core. And so that, I don't know, it really intrigued me, and I think it's really effective as just a sort of narrative engine, even if it doesn't call extreme attention to itself.
That's inviting me to a hypothesis, which is that this is a play that really wants to be directed by a woman. I think the play worked on stage on Broadway thanks to Anna DiShapiro, and I feel like plays have multiple parents. And of course, one of this play's parents is Letts. But I think one of the reasons the play was able to be as successful and imitatable was because it was developed as part of an ensemble. I think this speaks to the power of ensemble theaters like Steppenwolf.
So the production that was in New York, it was imported wholly from Steppenwolf. It's not that they then sort of remounted the same script in New York.
That's my understanding. Yes.
And it's interesting. This play had such name recognition. I mean, I was a theater kid, so maybe I shouldn't overstate sort of what its footprint was, but it felt like one of the rare sort of dramas, non-musicals that that people actually knew the name of. It did feel like it hit with that sort of impact.
It did, and it had that very compelling poster with all of the characters in the play arranged in a triangle, and it was pretty dramatic looking as a poster. I feel like that campaign stuck.
So I mentioned Buried Child earlier, and where that came to mind for me is there's a prominent incest subplot here, and that is a bold choice on Tracy Letts' part. You have to know that you're going to alienate a segment of your audience. So do you see there being a particular thematic function here in that choice? And where Buried Child gets pulled in for me is like sort of what is the collective unconscious association with incest that these playwrights want to pull in as they're telling their stories of families coming apart and the wreckage of the 20th century.
Yeah. It's funny. I wrote my senior thesis in high school about Buried Child.
Okay. A play I love very dearly.
I don't think I've read it since, but so you're getting quite old, 15-year-old memories of research I did about Sam Shepard
in 2007. So it's perfect. This is what we need.
It is. It's perfect. Sam Shepard was writing in direct response to his actual relationship with his father, who he felt abandoned by, and who began his own family apart from Sam's. And he writes about this in Fool for Love, and he writes about this in Buried Child. And I forget which of those two plays it was, but I think it was Fool for Love. His father stood up in the audience and shouted, "That did not happen," and walked out. Now, on the other hand, you have Beverly in August, Osage County being played by Tracy Letts' own father, Dennis, the role later played by Sam Shepard in the movie. So anyway, there's all these parallels here. So when you have paternity and fatherhood and abandonment as a major theme that you're exploring, I think it makes sense that the taboo of incest via unexpected fatherhood is a fitting trope to identify. And this play is so interested in the strong feelings that we have for our family members. And the epigraph of the play talks about this explicitly by pointing to the difference between familial love and wanting to have contact with your family and to have them under the same roof and in a way to control them. So the plot with Ivy and little Charles, it makes sense as an inversion of that estrangement. Here she's prepared to live in New York with him and essentially ignore their shared lineage in order to make their relationship work.
Yeah, it all feels like it's connected to the sort of idea that this family is a microcosm for, I think, a country that is degrading somehow. And maybe we should move on to another, though, element that I really love, which is the T.S. Eliot of this play. T.S. Eliot is a poet that I think is fascinating. And I love that Letts binds poetry into this play so intensely. It's something that I love to do. I throw poetic references in a lot of my stuff largely just to sort of show off, it seems to me, a little bit as I think more and more about what Letts is doing here. I love his use of the hollow men is the framing sort of. It opens with he quotes the line about here we go around the prickly pear, and it ends with this is how the world ends. This is how the world ends. Seemingly playing on the fact that a lot of people will know what because he cuts off before we get to not with a bang but a whimper. And the play takes its title from the title of a play by the title of a poem rather by Howard Starks. Do you see a particular thematic function to the poetry here? I always want to talk about the thematic function of every different thing, I guess.
I mean, there are so many traditions that bind playwriting to poetry. There are some traditions where what I would call a playwright is called a poet, and many multi-hyphenate writers who are both. It's something that I am personally less compelled to, but I also find myself participating in anyway, because I think the way dialogue appears on a page is a kind of poetry. It is in many ways experimenting and manipulating the expression of text. In a lot of ways, this script is very traditional, as opposed to other contemporary playwriting, which is, some contemporary plays that I've read include GIFs on the page, or really mess around with punctuation and capitalization in ways that either help actors achieve hyperrealism or move them away from realism altogether. And I get that, for me, is one of the major differences between playwriting and screenwriting. That's a huge generalization, but for the most part, screenplays are trying to recreate reality, and plays are doing a more interpretive job.
Well, they're also screenplays are much more seldom reproduced and published and treated as texts, which is something that I do really love about having a shelf full of plays on my wall. Is I love your point that they can be formatted in such a way that is reminiscent of poetry. One thing that is really untraditional about this play is when there are 3 columns of text all at once. I love how that invites me to sort of engage with the text on the page and how to sort of process that. It's such like I don't think I've ever seen 3 columns. You see 2 a lot, but 3 was exciting. And just sort of to do the choose your own adventure of how you go across that page. What was that effect like on stage when you have all 3 sort of spheres of the stage are being used so actively in conversation? Was it just washing over you, or were you actually able to, if you recall at all, are you able to sort of pick up the conversations?
I understand now that I've written a few plays that Letts has chosen the right moment to do this, because each of those moments are ones where simple information is being communicated to the audience, and that simple information happens to comprise a lot of people moving around and talking about complicated things. But at the time and on stage, I think that has to be directed in a way to assure the audience you do not have to catch on to everything that is happening with all of these people at the same time. This is a moment of transition where, we're watching everybody eventually show up at the dining table together.
Or what will be the centerpiece scene, yeah.
And I mean, I guess a moment like that mimics the overall shape of the play as well. There are all these threads that are happening at the same time, but ultimately this is a pretty simple story. a crisis brings a family together and causes them to explode apart again in a new, more final way.
All transformed in some way, most of all Barbara, who you see becoming this sort of mirror image of the mother that she detests. It's so haunting seeing that even just on the page when she is screaming, what is it? I'm in charge now. Felt like I had to go take a walk after that.
It is I'm running things now. And the reason I can say that with confidence, Ethan, is because my Wi-Fi network in college was Amy Morton, who's the actor who played Barbara. And the password was I'm running things now. I'm not kidding you.
I'm glad.
That was my roommate Nick Coburn's idea, but I was very happy to embrace that.
So we should wrap things up. I did want to touch on the movie briefly. I'm glad you've seen it, and I'm glad I haven't, because I really didn't want to let it eclipse my knowledge of the play. And I didn't want to come in here and accidentally be talking about that. But I felt like I had to dip my toes in a little bit. It's an hour and a half shorter than it is on the stage, I guess. It's less than 2 hours long. And Letts wrote the screenplay himself, so it's not as though it was presumably sort of taken away from him, although it was done by the Weinstein Company, who were notorious for exerting way too much control in their projects. I guess I just had this greater axe to grind about trying to film plays. I hate this sort of tendency that you feel you have to, quote unquote, open the script up and set scenes outside of the primary set, or write new scenes that take place outside the primary set, where so much of this, the effect of this play feels like it is about being claustrophobic and being stuck in this sort of decaying home. So I don't know, what's your review of the movie, if you feel like giving it?
Oh gosh. I mean, I saw it once and I didn't enjoy it. The casting made a perfect kind of sense that I disliked. I can't point to any of those actors and say that they were miscast. I think you're right. It is not a play that wanted to be adapted into a movie. There are very few plays that I can think of that I'm glad were adapted into movies, because I think they move at different speeds, and the dialogue of August Osage County wants an audience there to laugh and to respond in order for it to work. And I think some of why the movie felt so strangely paced and the humor doesn't work in the same way is because, as you said, we don't have the audience there to help clarify the tone of the dialogue, and a lot of it winds up sounding pretty melodramatic. The one play that I can think of that I'm very glad was adapted into a movie is John Guar's 6 Degrees of Separation. And I think the reason that works is because it is a play that moves at about the speed of a movie. And there's a lot of, there are a lot of scenes, particularly in the later 2/3, but even during the first third, which is basically a 40-minute scene, Louisa and Flan are also constantly talking to the audience. And the movie has very cleverly reconciled that by placing them at a wedding where they're gossiping with other guests at the wedding about what just happened to them. And we're cutting back and forth between them telling the story and the story of their dinner with Paul. I think audiences have a very different type of attention span, a willingness to sit through a long scene for a play that they don't have for a movie. And I guess Okay, this isn't quite your question, but it's what's on my mind, so I'm going to share it. For me, another major difference between playwriting and screenwriting is the fact that a role that's written on a play isn't being written to be fixed into a permanent, definite rendition. And when you commit a performance to film, that's the character. That is John Wick. That's who he is. That's what he looks like. And I feel like something is lost when a character is sealed into a single performance. I love the chance to see plays done again with a different director, with different actors. So that's another thing that winds up getting lost for me. And perhaps the way in which I see playwriting relating to poetry, because it is a craft that is about the moment that it is being expressed. When a play is performed, it is that play being performed at that time. And part of the craft of producing a play is the selection of the text and why are we going to go back to this one? I wonder when will we go back to this play? When will there be a notable new production of the play that is using the same text to explore new questions or to invite us to think about 2007 or about any of the things Letts was or wasn't trying to talk about then.
Well, now I just have to ask, and maybe the answer is pass, but can you think of anything, if you were to stage it, what would you innovate, or would you just do it exactly the same way? I mean, do you do it with a non-realistic house? Maybe it's a black box thing or gender swap it, like whatever sort of the typical tricks that people pull.
I'm not sure. I'm not much of a director. I think what I will hope from the next iteration of this play is some more attention to, I would say, the land politics of it. Because, I mean, I love Jana, but all she really has the opportunity to do in this play is hold the space for everybody else and react to what they are assaulting her with. And I think that is an intentional comment on Letts's part, and it makes me disappointed and wanting for perhaps a new production to really underscore that.
Yeah, I read an interview with Letts where he did talk about his feelings, and it was a little facile, the way that he responded, talking about it. He saying that we have sown the seeds of our own destruction through that genocide, and so Jana is there to represent that the native population was here before the white genocide and will survive after us, and using terms like our great national shame. And I can see where, as you say, it's maybe not being engaged with on as deep a level as it could be. Yeah,
because one of the funnier lines, one of the funnier exchanges in the play, Violet says, "She isn't any more native than I am," and Barbara says, "In fact, she is," or "In fact, they are." And that's a moment where you get the whole audience laughing at colonial complicity. But I'm also not sure what the directorial iteration of that idea would be. More plays.
So we've hit everything that I was hoping to hit. Is there anything that jumps out to you that we didn't talk about?
I feel satisfied.
Good. So do I. Well, thank you so much for your time and for all your insights on this and on theater and so many things. Is there anything that you'd like to sort of direct the audience to? Are there any outlets of yours that you'd like people to know about, or opportunities to enjoy your work?
Not at this time. I just want everybody to take care and be well.
That is a wonderful place to leave it.
What a Year is produced by me, Ethan Warren, with original music by my co-host Ryan Pollie. Thanks to Brian Rosemeyer for the mixing and mastering, and Shane Butler and the good folks at Portray Me for our artwork. Please take a few minutes to add us on your podcasting app of choice, and while you're doing that, if you could leave a quick rating and a review, it really does make a difference. You can find us on Twitter and Instagram at What a Year Pod. On our next episode, we'll be talking about Todd Haynes' I'm Not There and Radiohead's In Rainbows, plus Lindsey Buckingham's Live at Bass Hall DVD with guest Carrie Corrigan. It's gonna be a good one.